Hey guys, welcome to another episode of The Completionist. So anyway guys, this is going to be my final video during the winter break that I had off. And first and foremost guys, I want to apologize to each and every one of you. You know, I was really hoping to get more videos made, especially during the 3 months I was off, but unfortunately I just didn't have the motivation to make a lot of videos, and it seemed like that, you know, any night that, you know, I was free to make videos, just something came up that actually preoccupied my time. And I guess in my life, you know, friends and family and are the most important priorities in my life, and you know, I couldn't ignore those aspects of my life, you know, just to put videos out on this platform. So for this video guys, what I wanted to talk about is I just wanted to share with you all the games that I have completed for myself during the time that I was home over the winter break. So this is going to cover the time period that I was home from December 23rd, 2018 up to April 1st of 2019. Now I had set a rule for myself with regards to completing games during the time I was home. I really wanted to try to get at least 5 games completed and permanently retired. And thankfully I have actually reached that goal. And in fact I actually exceeded that goal. I've actually completed 6 games. So those are 6 games that I don't need to play anymore, and they are permanently retired. So what I wanted to do guys is I wanted to share with you what those 6 games were and what my basic thoughts are on them with regards to how the gameplay was and how difficult they were to complete. So let's get started. So the first game that I completed guys was a game I just completely picked at random for the Super Nintendo. I had never played this game before, ever, and but I was always interested in it. You know, I'm always interested to give all the JRPGs that were released for the Super Nintendo a try, and obviously, you know, the big names when it came to making RPGs for the Super Nintendo was literally Squaresoft and Enix and, you know, Capcom, and the title that I actually decided to play for the first time was Illusion of Gaia. So what did I think of Illusion of Gaia? Illusion of Gaia is actually a pretty solid action-based RPG. I think what really caught me off guard with regards to the game is depressing as fuck, and it's extremely dark, and I never really expected that. I never had that much of an opportunity, you know, to play a lot of Enix-style RPGs. You know, I have played Soul Blazer before, but I've never completed it, and I've never played Terranigma before. But there's a lot of death and destruction in Illusion of Gaia. You know, there's actual, you know, cannibalism. You know, there are characters on the verge of starvation. You know, and it's just like some of the journeys like take like months to actually complete. You know, being stranded on a raft, you know, for a month, you know, only having fish to eat, going through an underwater tunnel for days upon days upon days with no idea when you're going to come out of it. And I think that really caught me off guard because I never expected, you know, an SNES game to be so dark and depressing. It was still incredibly enjoyable, and thankfully it wasn't really that hard. I didn't really find that the game got really difficult until it came to actually beating the final boss, which I did have a bit of trouble with. It just literally takes pinpoint timing and to especially exploit a special move that can actually help you dodge some of the final boss's attacks. And with regards to completing it guys, there's only really one main completionist aspect of the game, and you just need to collect all 50 red jewels. And just try to get every treasure chest in every dungeon, which wasn't overly difficult. However, when it comes to completing Illusion of Gaia, I highly recommend to use a guide. And the reason why I say that is because some of the red jewels have a very short window in order to get them. And if you miss that short window to get some of those red jewels, then that's it, they're gone. You can't get them again. So when it comes to completing that game to 100%, guys, I highly recommend using the guide in order to collect the 50 red jewels and to make sure that you get every treasure and every item in every dungeon. So what do you get if you get all 50 red jewels? Well, you get access to a bonus dungeon where you get to fight a boss from the Soul Blazer series, and the boss can be a little bit unfair, but he has a very good predictable pattern, and if you stick to that pattern, then you'll have no issues beating him. But with regards to Illusion of Gaia, I actually really enjoyed it, and I'm surprised it actually took me this long to actually play it. So it was definitely a very enjoyable game. The second game that I completed, guys, when I was home, is a game that has a high amount of credibility to all gamers out there, and it's a Legend of Zelda game. Now, it's a game I've never played before, even though people swear by how great it is, and strangely enough, that game is getting a remake on the Nintendo Switch. And that game is The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening. I never had a chance to play very many Game Boy games growing up. My brother got a Game Boy for his birthday one year, and the only game that he ever got for it was Super Mario Land 2, the 6 golden coins. So that was really the only game that I played with the Game Boy, besides the pack-in game Tetris. But I always knew that The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening was critically acclaimed by not only critics but by a lot of gamers alike, but I just never had an opportunity to play it. So with the announcement of the Link's Awakening remake, I finally decided to give that game a try. So what did I think of it? It definitely lives up to the hype. It is a wonderful, enjoyable game, and I am very surprised that the Game Boy managed to make such a wonderful entry to the Legend of Zelda series. And even though I have only beaten 4 Zelda games and completed 3 of them, this one's my second favorite, behind A Link to the Past. It's just a really enjoyable game, and nothing about it felt tiresome or boring. I love the dungeon design. It's just the world was easy to travel. I loved all the side quests. Gameplay was easy. All the nice new mechanics that were new for a Zelda game at the time, and it was just incredible. So when it comes to completing the game, it's actually fairly easy to complete. You just have to make sure you get every key item, and you open every treasure chest. But the key aspect, guys, and this is something you have to be very careful, is you have to beat the game without dying. You can't die, not even once. So I highly recommend that you try to save in that game as much as you can, because the moment that you die in that game, then you lose out on the final completionist aspect of that game. And I think all it is, guys, is that Marin shows up at the end screen, at the end of the game, once you actually beat it. But it was actually super enjoyable. I just loved all the nods. I loved all the humor. Don't try to steal anything from the shop, even though it's tempting and even though it's hilarious, because if you do go see the shopkeeper, he will kill you, and that will ruin your completionist run of the game. But some of the dungeons, while enjoyable, were very frustrating. I remember the Hawk's dungeon, or the Eagle dungeon, or whatever it was called, where you had to knock the pillars down. That one took me a very long time to figure out. But I found a lot of the bosses incredibly unique and were a lot of fun, and I didn't really find many aspects of that game overly frustrating. It was just, it was really quite enjoyable. So I can definitely understand why a lot of people praise that game so much. Alright, the third game, guys, was a game for the NES. And it's a game that I've always seen in a lot of Nintendo Power magazines. As far as I know, I think there are 3 games like this, and I've never played any of those 3 games, and I decided to try one that probably had the most interest to me, and that game was The Uninvited. Now, The Uninvited is just kind of like a text roaming adventure, like those old Commodore 64 games. And I've always seen tons of articles, about Uninvited or Deja Vu or Shadowgate, and they always interest me, especially the puzzle aspects of it. And I finally sat down and decided to give one a try, especially the one that appealed to me the most, which was Uninvited. And that's simply because I'm a big horror movie fan, I'm a big slasher movie fan, so I actually decided to give the game a try. And despite its age, it actually holds up incredibly well. I actually really enjoyed it, even though sometimes it's as cryptic as fuck. And but it never felt tiresome, and it's actually a pretty quick play if you kind of think outside the box and you try your best, to kind of understand the puzzles and things along those lines. With regards to completing the game, guys, it's pretty straightforward. You just got to get to the end. But I think one thing I did enjoy about the game is the unlimited continues, because one thing I did actively try to do in this game is I tried to discover all the different ways you could die, which were actually incredibly fun, because if you went into the wrong room, or if you tried to come across a ghost and you didn't have the proper spell, or you just went somewhere where you weren't supposed to go, but you went there anyway, you just never knew what danger was going to be lurking in whatever room that you decided to go to. And I just want to state on record, the maze in that game can go fuck itself. That was probably the most overly frustrating aspect of the game was trying to figure that maze out. But it's just but some ways you could die, you just have no idea. You just got to be incredibly careful about where you go and what you do. And it got even so ridiculous that in each room I was literally clicking on everything to grab as many items as I could, because I really didn't know what was going to work and what was not going to work. And the super frustrating thing about it was that stupid red jewel. How in the hell are you supposed to know that sucker's cursed? So once you grab that red jewel, and then you only get a certain number of actions, before the jewel's evil will overcome you and actually kill you. And you can only finally dump that jewel, when you actually go outside, before you hit the greenhouse and the maze area. So that was a little frustrating, but I really enjoyed Uninvited. So it actually makes me anxious to finally give the other games a try, such as Deja Vu and Shadowgate. So the fourth game I've completed, guys, is a game for the Super Nintendo, and it's from a game series that I think doesn't get enough credit. I barely see it mentioned in a lot of top 10 or top 20 SNES games of all time. And even though, the game comes from Electronic Arts, and I know Electronic Arts is, kind of like the laughingstock of the video game world these days, but this series that they helped put out for the SNES is actually one of my favorite game series, for the Super Nintendo, even though they do have a few entries for the PlayStation 1 as well, but I haven't played those. This game series has a great sense of what I like to call transitional difficulty, because they're tough games, they're hard games, but they're fair. And that game series is the Strike series, and the entry of the Strike series that I actually played and completed for myself was Urban Strike, the sequel to Jungle Strike, and the sequel to the prequel to Jungle Strike was Desert Strike, and all entries that I actually love. So what did I think of Urban Strike? Wonderful, great game. In an urban setting, pretty unique, even though it didn't really start off so urban at the very beginning, because you know your first level you were in the jungle, and then the second level, you know, I think you were on the oil rigs or something like that. I could be wrong, but just really enjoyable. I actually found it a little easier than, you know, Desert Strike and Jungle Strike, because they give you a lot more resources to work with. Because obviously, one of the key things regarding that game is that you have to watch your fuel, and you have to watch your weapons as well, just to make sure you don't run out, especially if you're in a huge firefight. And the thing is that for me, one of the things I love about, you know, playing the Strike series of games is I love to blow up as many buildings as possible. It's just fun. Doesn't matter if it's an enemy building or a civilian building, but it's actually pretty crafty what Urban Strike does, because they'll actually put fuel drums and armor crates and weapon crates in civilian houses. So you kind of have to say to yourself, well, can you take the loss of points by blowing up a civilian house to get that fuel drum or get that ammo crate? And the question is yes, because the game has a lot of depth behind it, and there's a lot of different missions you can take. There's a lot of different mission objectives, far more than, you know, any of the other Strike series of games. And you actually get a different helicopter in this as well that can actually hold a lot more people, because, you know, you got to rescue hostages, and you know. And you know, buildings, huge buildings will actually blow up. You can actually blow up skyscrapers in the game, and it was actually a lot of fun. Some of the levels did get really super difficult. I found San Francisco really hard, and I found New York pretty hard as well, especially when it came to rescuing the hostages, just to make sure, you know, none of them got killed. But with regards to the completion aspect of that game, guys, there's not really much to it. You just finish all mission objectives and just make sure that, you know, you rescue the MIA pilots, which you'll get an opportunity to rescue a few of them throughout the game. It's just a matter of just beating each level. There's nothing really extra, you know, you need to look for or anything along those lines. But you know, if you played a Strike series of games, you know, you're probably like me. You just like to blow stuff up, and I think that's a lot of the fun that, you know, that comes with the Strike series, and I actually really enjoyed Urban Strike, and I look forward to playing the PlayStation 1 ones, which is Nuclear Strike and Soviet Strike. But I don't know how much they hold up to the earlier games on the SNES. But it's definitely an enjoyable game, and I highly recommend you try it out. And I would love to see, you know, like the Strike series on the SNES, you know, get a lot more recognition, because I think it's truly one of the most underrated series, you know, in gaming, especially if you love good transitional difficulty. So the fifth game, guys, is a game I've been working on for about a year. Super frustrating. It's made me rage quit quite a few times, but thankfully I have this game completed, and it is permanently retired. And despite as frustrating and as rage quitting as this game was, I actually really enjoy it. And we're actually getting a more fleshed out version of the game coming out this year. And that game is Catherine for the PS3. So, with regards to Catherine, what a wonderful but yet painful fucking experience. But it's finally done. And if you want a good challenge, if you want something that's going to test your patience as a gamer, try this game. Catherine is one of the most maniacal, rage-inducing puzzle games I've ever played in my entire life, and I absolutely love it. And it's just a great game, and God bless Atlas for like coming up with this unique concept, because despite as frustrating as the game was, I really loved it. But there is a lot of stuff to do in this game in order to complete it. I think overall, I put about 85 to 90 hours into it, but the game is fully completed, and I actually have the game platinumed, and so it is permanently retired. I think one of the most frustrating aspects of the game was definitely doing the Babel Tower. I managed, because in the Babel Tower there's 4 stages. There's Altar, there's Menhir, there's Obelisk, and there's Axis Mundi. And single player, I managed to get through the Altar, and I managed to get through Menhir, with a little practice. But Obelisk got really frustrating, and I think one of the reasons why it got really frustrating is that it threw every kind of obstacle it could at you, and it threw every kind of problem block at you. It threw crumble blocks, ice blocks, spiked blocks, bomb blocks, and completely question mark random blocks, which you did not know what kind of block was going to appear under it. And I tried Obelisk for the longest time single player, and I would get so close, but I just couldn't make that final push to actually beat it. And Axis Mundi single player is just ridiculous. It throws this checkerboard pattern at you, and it's just super hard to actually finish single player. So if you're attempting to complete Catherine, what I recommend for the Babel Tower is to play 2 players, because it's far simpler. Get you and a friend to do the Babel Tower 2-player, because there's not nearly as many floors as you have to climb compared to single player. And the blocks are a hell of a lot more generous, because they have to give you enough so that not only you can climb the wall, but your partner as well. So that was the only way I was ever able to complete Catherine, was because I got my friend to play it with me, and we actually managed to beat those final two Babel Towers together, and that's what helped me get to platinum. But not only that, guys, there's 8 endings in the game. The True Lover and the True Cheaters ending are absolutely worth getting. I kind of felt cheated though, because there's an ending called the True Freedom ending, and it is kind of a little frustrating to get, because instead of going to the good side or the evil side, you have to keep your section right dead center in the middle. And that's kind of really hard to do, all depending on the questions you ask. So the difficulty in that, I was kind of expecting the True Freedom ending to be really epic, and unfortunately it wasn't. It was actually a big letdown. So that ending wasn't worth getting, but for me as a completionist, I had to get it. I unlocked every song in the jukebox. That comes with getting all the trophies, and getting all the beating everything in the game, because one thing you also have to do, you have to play the game on normal mode, but you also have to play the game on hard mode. And what I recommend is just to go through the game without really worrying about any of the completionist aspects, because you do get a chance to replay all the levels every time you go to the bar, and this is the time you should really focus on getting the gold trophies for each stage in both normal mode and hard mode, because you get unlimited lives. So the first time you play these stages, just focus on just beating it with limited number of lives that you actually have. And at least in normal mode, you can there's an undo button. So if you end up moving around the blocks and it puts you in an impossible situation, you can always click undo and try to create a better path for yourself. Another annoying aspect of Catherine was definitely the arcade game Rapunzel. In all honesty, I found the puzzles in Rapunzel a hell of a lot harder than some of the stages, even on hard mode. Because even though you get unlimited tries on Rapunzel, the fact is that you have to beat the arcade game on normal mode, and there's 64 stages. And most of the stages can take around 2 to 5 minutes, all depending on how hard the puzzle is, but some of them are very frustrating. And if you beat the original 64 stages on Rapunzel, then you get Rapunzel Extra Mode, which has even more harder puzzles. And you have to beat both of them, and you have to get the 4 rosaries at the very end of not only Rapunzel Normal Mode, but Rapunzel Extra Mode, in order to eventually get the trophies regarding that game. And that was a very frustrating completionist aspect of the game. But despite all the frustration, guys, I did really get my enjoyment out of it. And in all honesty, compared to the amount of time that I actually put into some JRPGs, which could be hundreds of hours, it was actually nice to get a PS3 game permanently retired and completed. That actually didn't take me that actually took me less than 100 hours. So the game is retired, and I'm happy for it. So I don't want to see any moving blocks in a really long time. And the final game that I completed in 2018, guys, was a game that I did do a how to complete video on it last year. But let me be completely honest with you. When I actually put that video out there, it actually wasn't completed. But I was coming close to the end of my winter holiday last year, and I really had to put that video out there. But I took the extra time home to finish what I had left over in that game, and now it is completed and permanently retired. And it's a game that I've tried to play multiple times throughout my college years, but I really wanted to get it finished and permanently retired. And that game was Breath of Fire 3. So when I put out that how to complete video, I pretty much had about 95% of the game finished, so I don't really need to go over too much of how to complete the game, because if you've watched that video, I'll put a link for it down below. But the last few things that I had to do in the game was I had to get my fishing score up to 9,500 so I could get the fish ranking. And when you get the fish ranking, you get an item called a fountain pen, which can allow you to use skill ink as much as possible without actually using the usable item too much. But the super frustrating fact about fishing is that it's completely random. You've got to try to get the biggest size of each fish, and it all really depends if the game is feeling forgiving. You could fish in the same area a couple of times, and you'll get fish that are close to the largest size you need, or the smallest, but you have no control over that. So you catch the one type of fish, and if you don't get the size you're looking for, you got to exit out, and you got to go back in, and then you got to try again, don't get it, exit out of the fishing, go back into the area again. And that was very frustrating, which sums up the worst completionist aspect of Breath of Fire 3, is that everything is completely random and you have no fucking control over it. And I was missing one key piece of armor that I didn't get the item drop. It was the Divine Helm. Thankfully the drop rate for that wasn't as ridiculous as the Goo King's sword. Still frustrating. It had a 1 out of 128 drop, but using that skill that decreases the drop rate, I managed to cut it down to 1 out of 64. And I got incredibly lucky. I actually got it on my 4th battle, so thankfully that wasn't frustrating. But the most frustrating aspect of the game, to finally fully complete it to 100%, is that there are one-of-a-kind items that you can get in the fairy village through exploration. And this is the only way you can get those items. The only way. Random enemy drops, don't drop them. You can't find them in a treasure chest. You have to send your fairies out on a distant journey, and if you're lucky, they'll bring it back to you. But your fairies can also die, or they can bring you back crap, which you literally have no control over. So there was 5 items that I was missing from the exploration aspect of the fairy village. So when you go to the fairy village and you put your 3 fairies into exploration, what you have to do is you have to go outside, get into a random battle, go into the map until an exclamation point comes up, and you're put into a little small area where you can walk around and do battles. So once you put your fairies in exploration mode, as I said, just go outside. You need to get into 18 battles. And when you finish the 18th battle, save. Just camp just outside one of the fairy rings where you can go into the fairy village and save. And then, once you save, go into the fairy village, walk up to the sign. If you're lucky, all 3 fairies will survive. And then go into the house and then talk to the fairies to see what they give you. And a lot of times they will not give you the item you're looking for, or your fairies will die, or maybe one might be successful in grabbing an item. And so if that happens, reset. Do it again. Walk inside the fairy village. Thankfully, you don't have to do 18 battles again. Just reset. Exit the camp, go into the fairy ring, go check the bulletin board, go up to the fairy, see if you get the item you're looking for. Didn't get it, reset. And that's what I did for hours at a time. Was just I was playing Breath of Fire 3 on the PS3, and every time they didn't give me an item I was looking for, I would just hit the PlayStation button, quit game, go back into the game, and just keep doing that over and over and over again. But I finally got all the items. The 2 most frustrating aspects were just items that you could resell for a high price, and probably the 2 I was looking for the most was the lithograph and the dragon tear. But after a few hours and just resetting the game just countless amount of times, I finally did it. So that game is now permanently retired. So anyway, guys, those are the 6 games that I have completed since I've been home. So actually I'm going to be flying back to Alberta tomorrow. And I still do have my SNES and NES Classic up there, and I do have a PS3 up there that, you know, that's in the company condo, and I do have my my PSP. So I plan on, you know, trying to get through as many games on the SNES and NES Classic, and the 3 PS3 games that I brought up with me was Zone of the Enders, the HD remix. I brought Hyperdimension Neptunia, the very first one. Not the best game in the series from what people have told me, and pretty lackluster compared to all the other sequels in the series. And I'm working on my second playthrough of Tales of Zelda. And so those are the games I hope to try to complete, you know, while I'm working away from home. So anyway, guys, as I said before, you know, I really wish, you know, I could make more videos, you know, throughout the time I was home, but I just simply didn't have the motivation to do it. So anyway, thanks for hearing about the games that I did complete while I was home. So I'll hopefully have some content for you when I come home in August. So anyway, guys, as always, take care, and I wish you nothing but the best. Later.